Sunshine.
Sunshine, sunshine, sunshine. Whoa, it does feel good.
Well, it's time for full disclosure, and the Better Government Association's David Greising joining me. I'm Greg Bishop. It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. David, thanks for joining us, and you're joining us via Zoom for the first time. Greatly appreciate it. How you doing? Looking good up there in Chicago.
Rainy morning, but feeling okay. Thanks, Greg.
Well, we, of course, got sunny skies here, possibility of some showers. There's a bit of crazy weather all across the state. The governor yesterday declaring a disaster, not just for Sangamon County from the straight line winds that devastated the utility here, but you guys had flash flooding up there. How's, before we get into our topics, how you guys handling the more rain after last weekend's floods?
Well, the grounds are saturated. The grass is very green. That's the upside. But the flooding in some of the streets and underpasses here has just been unprecedented in what I've seen over the years. And so if this sort of thing continues, I think we've got some problem with regard to water management. They've had to open up the gates to let the effluent go out into Lake Michigan. Beaches have been closed. It's a pretty big public safety issue. If it keeps recurring, could be a problem for the city.
Well, we'll definitely be sending our best to you guys up there, but we've been dealing with our own problems down here in Springfield. At one point, 40,000 people were without power. They got that down to virtually everybody back on, but of course, all of the cost associated with that devastation from those straight line winds here. So obviously looking to get some of those FEMA dollars, federal resources to help with that, and the state's designation for disaster definitely helps with resources as well. But David, a lot of other stuff going on outside of the weather, and it's never a dull moment in Illinois. And something that you guys do with the Better Government Association is you work to keep tabs on all of that and more. So let's talk about something I think that has already gotten a lot of attention, and that's the ongoing corruption investigation and charges involving former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan. We had the ComEd 4 trial a few months ago that resulted in a jury verdict against 4 individuals, a former ComEd official and several lobbyists, including a close confidant of Michael Madigan, being Mike McLean. But there's another close confidant that's facing a trial coming up in August up in Chicago, and that is Tim Mapes. And there's been some revelations. David, we're going to hear a lot more of Madigan's voice on wiretap recordings.
Yes, it sounds like it. And we're also seeing that the prosecutors are really trying to connect the dots to Madigan in this sprawling corruption investigation. In the ComEd 4 trial, of course, the jury bought the argument that Michael McLean, the crony of Madigan's, sort of Mr. Fix-It, it appears, was very connected to the Madigan operation. And now this trial of Tim Mapes, the former chief of staff, is connecting Madigan or Mapes with McLean and Mapes with Madigan, and showing that Mapes sometimes was the middleman who connected those two. And so they're trying to kind of draw that circle and link those three so that when Madigan ultimately goes on trial, it'll be some time yet, they hope to be able to convict him of public corruption as well.
Yeah, so Madigan faces trial next spring, so next year. He's pleaded not guilty to 22 charges in this case. He's got an additional charge involving AT&T, but a lot of focus just on the overall, I guess what you could characterize as prosecutors calling it Madigan Enterprise, or some may call it the machine. Madigan had a nexus of power, David. I'm sure you're familiar, not just being the long-term House Speaker, but also the Democratic Party chair, controlling the purse strings for the Democratic Party in Illinois. But what we haven't seen yet, and I can't wait to hear all of the audio recordings if they do release those as they did during the ComEd 4 trial, including some undercover video, just very revealing. But we have yet to see any substantive movement on ethics reforms that specifically address some of the things that we're finding out in this trial, not just the ComEd 4, but soon to be the Tim Mapes trial and soon to be the Madigan trial specifically. But where are we at with the conversation of ethics at the Illinois State House?
Well, the leaders in state government seem to be comfortable with the small number of reforms that were passed in the immediate aftermath of the revelations about the Madigan investigation, and they've left some very important business undone. Conflicts of interest, disclosures of conflicts of interest are inadequate. Disclosures of work by family members remains inadequate. Subcontractors to contracting are not adequately disclosed, et cetera. So there's still a lot of work to be done in order to clean house in Springfield. And it's unfortunate that the leaders haven't used this as an opportunity to be more ambitious about trying to clean up government in one of the most corrupt states in the country.
So obviously a lot of unfinished work, things on the cutting room floor. Do you anticipate that we may see this elevated during fall session? Or do you think that maybe they're going to wait until all the dust settles and all the verdicts are out before they actually move forward with something to specifically address what has already been found in at least one trial of corruption within the Illinois State House?
After the verdict in the ComEd 4 trial, one might have hoped that at least one of the leaders in government, either the governor or the president of the Senate or the Speaker of the House, might have said it's time to do something once and for all. And none of those people said anything close to that. It's possible they're waiting until Madigan goes on trial, if it happens on schedule next spring, and maybe after that. But so far, we're not seeing any sign that that is in the works. And on top of that, nobody in the state legislature at the lower levels has taken this up as a cause either. And so it's been frustrating for those of us in the good government business that there's not more of a push to do something. The Better Government Association some years ago put out a multi-point agenda about all the different measures that could be taken, including some I've mentioned earlier, and only a few of those have been passed into law at this point.
David Greising, Better Government Association, who joins us here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. We got a break coming up, and I want to talk about the governor and various business leaders looking to head over to the UK for a trade mission. But just briefly here, the immigration issue obviously impacting the city of Chicago, looking to get migrants that can have proper housing. And we've talked a lot about the health care subsidies for undocumented migrants and the change in policy the governor has. But there's another alarming story that came out last week about allegations against Chicago police. But interesting, David, I want to get your take on this. The Fraternal Order of Police president, John Catanzara, he said that he doesn't believe these allegations because of the Safety Act provision that allows for anonymous complaints against law enforcement. And he says that that could be what's behind this. Is there any legitimacy to that? And what kinds of problems do you foresee if we do have these types of anonymous complaints being filed?
Well, I doubt very much that John Catanzara has access to the investigative information that indicates where these complaints are coming from. Given that one of the allegations is that a teenage girl was impregnated by a Chicago police officer, that's unlikely to be an anonymous complaint. I think this is a red herring on his part, unless he has proof that the material information is coming from anonymous complaints. It sounds like from what little we know of the details here, that there are some people going on the record with these complaints. So we'll see. I mean, the Fraternal Order of Police has been obstructionist when it comes to holding its members accountable for many, many years. John Catanzara really has been the emblem of all that. And so I think this is a lot of rhetoric on his part in defense of people in his union, the actions of which sound deplorable. And they're serious enough that they're moving these immigrants out of the police station in question. So let's wait and see what the evidence says before we start buying into what John Catanzara is saying.
We'll definitely be watching that closely. Something else that's going to be watched closely is Governor J.B. Pritzker heading over to the UK, and he's got a contingent of business associations going with him. David Greising, stay tuned. We'll get your thoughts on that coming up here next with Springfield's Morning News on WMAY. Well, we're back with full disclosure. Better Government Association's David Greising joining me. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. Governor J.B. Pritzker going global. David, he recently went on a trip overseas during the pandemic. I think it was, 2021 or 2022? I can't remember. Just all those years kind of blend together. But he's going back, and he's taking a large contingent with him from the Illinois Manufacturers Association, from the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, several other business leaders and business groups all planning on going here. What's the idea of going over to the UK for on a trade mission?
Sort of has two objectives, it seems here. He does want to be the big salesperson for the state in global markets, and his staff is saying that he plans several trips abroad in the coming months in order to do just that. The governor also seems to have ambitions one day to be president of the United States. And one of the weaknesses in his resume is that he doesn't have much international experiences. And so going abroad, getting known in those circles, and being able to say he's somebody who knows how to operate on a global basis would be beneficial to him if he ever has an opening to run for president.
So obviously this is possibly, of course, looking to get more trade, but you're saying there could be an element of wanting to elevate his position on a global stage a bit more as well?
Yeah, well, his speech at a couple of appearances at the Davos, the World Economic Forum, in the early part of this year, really were sort of a debut. But prior to that, he had gone over for a climate conference, and in fact had brought back some investments to the state in the electrical vehicle industry. He's pushing the EV industry as a big opportunity for growth for the state of Illinois, and he's having some progress. So these trips are not a total waste for the state or for the taxpayers, but they also do serve the governor's personal political ambitions as well.
Well, and the taxpayer cost, something that obviously people are interested in. Indication is that all of the non-government attendees are going to be paying for their own way. So like the Manufacturers Association, for instance, they're going to be paying for Mark Densler to travel overseas to the UK. And the state taxpayers are going to be picking up the cost for the state employees. How much all of this is going to cost, David? How can we best find that out?
Well, I think in some cases on his past trips, he's actually picked up part of the cost of his staff, as the governor has been known to do from time to time. So we don't yet know. That information is absolutely subject to freedom of information requests for those records. And so they're discoverable. There will be a little lag before we know exactly what the tab is on that spending.
David Greising, Better Government Association. Always appreciate chatting with you. Looking forward to next week as well. For people wanting more information about the BGA and your guys' news outlet, Illinois Answers, tell us how we can get access to all of that and more.
Yeah, the Illinois Answers Project website is illinoisanswers.org, and the Better Government Association is bettergov.org. I'm at dgreising at bettergov.org.
David Greising, Better Government Association, greatly appreciate it. Glad we were able to connect on video as well, and we'll talk again in the near future, okay?
Thanks, Greg. Great to see you.
Absolutely, likewise. It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. That's all I've got for you today here on the program. Be sure to check out Bishop On Air on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and you'll be able to connect with that way. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of what we've discussed and more today. It's now 9 o'clock coming up on it, and